Hey, what's up, guys? Today we're going to talk about the 3 reasons for why your blood sugar is higher in the morning than when you go to bed and what you can do about it. All right, everybody, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about probably one of the subjects that really just drive a lot of the clients that we work with and patients we work with kind of batty and nuts, because it can get really confusing when this happens. And sometimes, it can be simpler than we really think. But one of the things that just drives us nuts when we're trying to make change and we're trying to see and start to figure out what's going on in our body, and when we're starting to take our blood sugars, for instance, is when we go to bed and we got a good blood sugar, and then we wake up the next morning feeling all pissed off because that number's higher when we went to bed, when we woke up than when we went to bed. It can be very defeating. It can be very, it can really bring down the feeling when we think we're doing a good job of doing that. So I'm going to talk about a couple of things, the 3 things that are really the biggest impact in that. And then I'm going to finish off with kind of another conversation of what you can do about it. Right. And so stick with me, dive in. Let's have some fun talking about this. And before, as always, what I'm going to do is hey guys, look, I'm here for you. I want to share this information with as many people as possible. There's way too many people in the US, Canada, and the world really that are dealing with metabolic syndrome, insulin resistance, diabetes. And these are the risk factors nowadays. I mean, there's a lot of complications that come with those diagnoses. And, at the time of recording this, we're at the end of 2020. And, coronavirus, COVID is kind of running rampant. And we've been able to show the studies are there. The higher the blood sugar is, the more insulin resistant you are, the worse some of these aspects of your health are, the more at risk you are, right? But here's the important part. The more you improve yourself in these areas, the better you do, the more resilient you are, the safer you are. Right. So there's a reason I say Life Revived here. I want you to be healthy. I want you to be happy and follow these tips. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you hit the bell so that you can get this information first and you can be the one that's thriving rather than surviving in this nowadays. So do me a favor, subscribe, share, because it really does make a difference in the YouTube world. Okay, guys. All right. So let's dive in. Number one thing that I think is probably the most common and explains why some of the frustrations might be there. It's something called the dawn phenomenon. Excuse me. And so when you think about how the sun sets, the sun rises, think of the sunrise is dawn phenomenon, and this dawn phenomenon, and really I'm going to probably refer to it as dawn effect, because ultimately effect is a lot easier to say than phenomenon. And, I want to save myself some brain power. So biggest thing with this dawn effect is it's basically our body's natural response to our day-to-day sort of cycles, which is also known, as a lot of people know, as the circadian rhythm. Okay. So it's a response to the sun. And a lot of times with that dawn effect, it's our body's response to the sun coming back up. I mean, we've really been designed and we've evolved to follow that. I mean, I spent a lot of time in the wilderness, in nature. You may have seen some of the videos wondering what sort of room I'm in, and that is my van that I've built out. And I always find it so surprising how early I wake up and how as soon as it starts getting dark, I want to stay up. I want to sit around the fire. I want to do that thing, but I'm dog tired. It's not that I had more of an active day or anything like that. Sometimes I have, but it's because the sun has gone down and there's no other kind of, stimulus that I'm getting that's keeping me awake. So it is the natural response of this. And every human being on the earth has this, right? We all have this waking, this kind of rest and waking cycle that really ultimately there's different hormones being released, okay, that create these effects. Because a lot of people think it's just insulin resistance. It's just type 2 diabetics. And that's not true. We all have this. There's this other parameters involved with insulin resistance with type 2 diabetes that makes it more prevalent, okay? Makes it more noticeable. Because ultimately what happens, there's certain hormones that are released through the night and in the morning, and especially with the dawn effect, right? That morning rise, our bodies are designed to get up and perform, right? Whether it's to go do some sort of activity or go to hunt or gather or whatever, we release a ton of hormones, epinephrines and cortisols and things like that to get us going, okay? When that happens, one thing, when we're using our bodies more, what do we usually need? We need more sugar. We need more of these fuels in our system. And so it usually gets that bump. Our body knows this. So it's also going to release some other hormones, for instance, insulin, right? But in a standard person who's so sensitive to their insulin, you get that surge of other hormones, cortisol and epinephrine. The blood sugar raises. But then what happens, because you've also released insulin, it comes down right away. We don't see that effect. When you're insulin resistant or when you're type 2 diabetic, you don't have that sensitivity to insulin, right? So you get that morning rise of hormones, the blood sugar starts to come up, and you also have that insulin release. But because you're insulin resistant, we don't see those numbers come down quite as readily, and then it becomes a frustrating factor, okay? And so one of those things, depending on what's going on, if you're taking some different intermittent fasting steps or low carb dietary approach and those types of things, and you're seeing your blood sugars drop down at night, and ultimately those morning numbers are coming up, kind of one of the concept is to keep the course. I'll go into some tips at the end of the video like I talked about, but I mean, it shows that your body's adapting and changing, and as you continue to work on that insulin resistance, it usually will come down nicely, and it'll adapt as you adapt. So because usually it's just a couple points, 50, 30, points within there, and it's not ultimately dangerous in the long run. Of course, if you're getting some pitting alerts, always check with your physical, your physician, make sure they agree with that. But keep the course. That's what's happening. Start to understand what's going on there with those hormones. Don't beat yourself up. It's not always the food you ate before. Of course, if you're eating big sugars, big carbohydrate meal before going to bed, that's a big part of it. But if you're doing a lot of things right, you're going to bed with a lower blood sugar and it's coming up in the morning, it's likely some of those hormones having its effect on you. Number 2, now this one, you definitely will have to talk to your doctor about if this sounds like you. I don't know if I'm going to pronounce it properly. I've never heard the proper response to it, but I'm going to go with it. It's called Themoji Effect. Maybe I'll try to put it up on here, but Somogi effect, Themoji Effect. And this is for the people that you are diagnosed with something like type 2 diabetes, type 1 even, or prediabetes, something like that, where you are on a blood sugar managing medication. Now, disclaimer, I can't tell you what to do with those meds. I am not your doctor. So therefore, make sure you are talking to your physician before you do anything with your medications or your prescriptions, okay? But this is usually what happens. So if you are taking a blood sugar managing medication, right, that is needed when your blood sugars are high. But if you're going to bed with a lower number, and then you're taking those medications at the same time and going to sleep, those blood sugars continue to drop throughout the night, okay? Now, these medications do not have off switches. It's not like they're sitting there monitoring your blood sugar while you're sleeping. And so as your blood sugar drops, it's doing its job by pushing down those blood sugars more and more. And that can happen. What can happen is you get to a point where your body says, whoa, that's way too low. And it has to start releasing all those hormones, and it has to start doing things to try and protect you and, get those numbers back up, right? And so how do you know if this is you? I mean, one of the ways that the most common things that happen with this sort of effect is you are going to be waking up throughout the night. Now, a lot of us do wake up to go and pee and a lot of those types of things. I'll talk about another trick with that in the future. But if you're waking up, and especially if you're having trouble falling back to sleep when you wake up, or for instance, if you're anxious, rapid heartbeat rate, or sweating, for instance, that's a pretty good sign that this might be happening. And some of those medications that you are on are pushing that low and your body's trying to protect yourself. So an easy way to kind of look into this is hopefully you're checking your blood sugars. So when you wake up, okay, check your blood sugar. You should have checked it before you went to bed, but then you check it again. And there's a couple different options here. One of them, obviously, it may be low. And if it's low, that's a pretty easy sign to have that conversation with your doctor to say, hey, do I need to make any adjustments here because I'm waking up in the middle of the night, I'm getting these weird blood sugars, I feel like crap because I'm anxious, my heart's beating, it's a big one. And because on the other side, the other option is it might be high, right? Which is a little bit harder to kind of talk through with your doctor. But I mean, because what's happening is that's dropping. And then you're waking up because of all the hormones your body's releasing to try and bring those blood sugars back up, right? And that's why, I mean, your heart's beating fast, you're sweating, you're anxious because it's like all these adrenalines. Your body's panicking. It's trying to save your life by bringing those blood sugars back up. And so sometimes it can be really high, right? And then the other one is obviously it's right there in the middle. You go to bed, it's a good number. You wake up, it's a good number. It doesn't really show anything, but then it's still going up in the morning. You know, if you have some of those symptoms, it's still a good conversation to have with your primary care doctor or your whoever's prescribing those blood sugar medications, you know, and then just test. Go in there with some information, have a good conversation, and see if they can help you out with that. And then, you know, number 3, I was going between a couple different options of how we can talk about this. And ultimately, I wanted to give you some things to really think about without spending too much time in the hormone world and the cycle world that makes it a little bit harder to balance. And like I said, I'm going to give you some tricks at the end here, so stick around. But all this talk of circadian rhythm and hormones and all these types of things, we have to know that that's the case. When your blood sugars go up in the morning like that, that is the reason. Whether it's being pushed that way or if it's just part of your insulin resistance or whatever's happening, that's the fact. But some of the other things that really have a big impact, I kind of all clumped them into another area, are what are some of the disruptors or activities or things that we might do that are disrupting that circadian rhythm, that are causing that imbalance to create that high spike in the morning. And I think this is one that can get a little confusing. It's a little hard to avoid, but it's ultimately, if you're a shift worker, if you're working nights, or if you're doing those times when most people are sleeping, you're at work, you know, we appreciate you, you're doing good, but this is not great for your hormones. Okay. And so like that whole wake and, you know, rise and rest cycle is a little disrupted by you. There's a lot of different things you can do as like, you know, with blackout curtains and different meditation activities or sleep activities to try and keep those as balanced as possible. How you eat, those types of things. It's a little bit a harder one and you know, a little bit more of a conversation there, but that just know that could be a big part of it, you know, and looking into some different supplements, looking into some different activities that you can do, you know, something as simple as making sure that your room when you're sleeping is dark as could be. You know, you can get those alarm clocks that like they have a light that slowly light up when you wake up, before you wake up. Those are all really pretty good. Another one that we're all very good at is sitting there and staring at our phone, staring at a computer screen. You know, I've got a light on me, right? That makes it even brighter, but it's like, you know, too much screen time, especially later in the day, right? How often are we laying in bed, you know, surfing Facebook or YouTube or Instagram? You know, I'm guilty of it too, but it's something where that blue light mimics the sun to our brain, right? So when we do that, it ends up throwing off that circadian rhythm pretty significantly. And then that can have a big effect on our sleep, on our morning blood sugars, and those types of things. There's lots of cool stuff you can do for that. They have like blue blockers. These are my wives, so I don't want to, they're probably pretty small on me, right? But you can have different blue blockers to protect your eye from the light that's coming through there. I have an iPhone, and I'm pretty sure most phones have this now where I can put it on like night shift. I have it set automatically for sun up and sun down, but I even have a filter where it removes all the blue light from the screen. So it's basically looks red, right? So if I have to be on my phone later at night, it's not disrupting my brain cycles with that. Sorry, my dog just is walking in. And that's a big one. Like, and, you know, so if you're reading your tablet at night, if you're on your phone, try to reduce that blue light. Try not to have fluorescent lights on too often. You can get the warm light bulbs and things like that are always beneficial, but try to avoid that. You know, and kind of to go with number 2, the Themoji Effect, have that conversation with your doctor about possible medications that might be disrupting that might be throwing you one side or the other. It doesn't have to be blood sugar. There's a lot of other medications that will have its effect on certain hormones that we're releasing. And then, you know, I talked about insulin resistance being a big driver for that, right? So doing things like a low carb, high fat diet, the ketogenic diet, intermittent fasting, you know, I talk about a lot of the, you know, things. How do you know if that is you? I mean, I talk about the early signs of diabetes and insulin resistance, the foods that are the most problematic. I'll talk about more about intermittent fasting, the problems there, benefits there. But those are all the things you can start doing. Don't eat a sugary meal before bed. You know, don't have late caffeine. Don't, you know, one of the things is, are you working out later at night, right? driving up those like adrenalines and things like that. I mean, it's just gonna, all those things have potential to throw that off. So start paying attention. What is your schedule like? Keep a journal, right? Blood sugars before bed, blood sugars in the morning, and look at what you've been doing and you can play with that. I have an Aura ring, okay? And it tells me my sleep cycles and I tag everything that I'm doing in there. I jumped in the hot tub the other day. I got adjusted by my chiropractor out here in, give him a shout out, Dr. Kris Stepney in Edmonton. He's amazing. You know, those types of things. Did I have a carb heavy meal? Those all help you identify that circadian rhythm because that's what it comes down to. Okay. So those are some of the big ones, you know, and then one of the other things that really helps with the dawn phenomenon, if you're going, or dawn effect, if you're going to bed with those lower blood sugars coming up and you're trying to do a lot of the right things, a little bit of apple cider vinegar before bed is really beneficial. You can take it, just a quick shot of it, or you can even mix it in, dilute it in some water, drink that down. It's been shown to keep those blood sugars lower in the morning. If you are a late night snacker, instead of snacking on anything carb or sugar or anything like that, avoid that and stick with proteins and fats, right? That'll keep you more balanced. It'll keep some of those hormones from going up and down, those types of things. But ultimately, guys, pay attention. You know, put a little more work in identifying where your schedule is, how you are doing that, and I'm sure something will come up. You know, I'm happy to hear what you find in the comments, but ultimately, I'm here for you guys. Check out the other episodes on, for instance, what are some of the errors with intermittent fasting, or some of the things that are driving on here, the signs and symptoms of insulin resistance. I'm here for you. I don't want you to get stuck in that rat race of, you know, insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, metabolic syndrome. I want you to live well. I want you to be happy. I want you to be healthy. And I will see you on the next video.